Weirdest People in the World is a 2020 work of cultural psychology and sociology by the Harvard academic Joseph Henrich. It attempts to describe the ways in which Westerners have evolved to become different to most people elsewhere in the world and throughout history. Have evolved may sound contentious, but Henrich believes that culture and biology are inseparable as far as human beings are concerned. The author uses the word weird in two senses. Firstly, to signify that globally and historically, we're an aberrant minority that believes it's normal. We're aberrant insofar as, for example, we prefer analytic to holistic thinking. We believe in free will. We believe our moral judgments are universal. We defer far less to authority, and we overvalue our own personal uniqueness. Moreover, our brains have subtly evolved to facilitate and reflect those things. The book begins with a section called "Your Brain Has Been Modified." The source of all these aberrations is the nuclear family. What makes us different is that for well over a millennium, we've been the beneficiaries or victims, depending on your point of view, of a deliberate local abolition of the extended family. We've been constrained to live in monogamous units, and this has compelled us to seek support, where necessary, from strangers instead of relatives. An impersonal prosociality, as Henrich calls it, has emerged. The second way the author uses the word weird is as an acronym to signify what weird people are nowadays. They're people who belong to communities that are Western, educated, industrialised, rich and democratic. As well as asking what defines the weird outlook, Henrich wants to ask how we got here. Why did the West take off so spectacularly, but not the rival civilizations of the Middle East and China, especially since both were well in advance of us at the end of the first millennium? He finds the answer in the Roman Catholic Church, specifically what he calls its MFP, its Marriage and Family Programme. For reasons the book doesn't fully explore, the Church pitted itself from a very early date against cousin marriage, even sixth cousins at some points in history, as well as banning marriage to step-parents, step-children, godparents and cousins of widows. In short, it relentlessly and systematically dismantled all extended kinship-based institutions over a period of nearly 2,000 years. The result of all this was to increase social mobility. One sometimes had to go a long way to find a spouse, but also to reduce the support network that extended kinship groups could sometimes provide. Henceforth, if you got into trouble, you were on your own, which meant people had to become more proactive and creative, but they also had to learn to trust unrelated others. Out of that emerged voluntary organisations like guilds, universities and large interregional markets. These organisations preferred urban centres, so cities burgeoned, and from the increasing intercourse between intellectuals, a collective mind emerged, which drove innovation and invention, but also gave birth to democratic liberalism and its attendant institutions. What makes this book so important is its rigorous argumentation and its grounding in solid, often ingenious research. Of course, it is controversial. In a broadly critical review in The Guardian, Nicholas Guyot took Henrich to task for marginalising colonialism. If anything, he wrote, the violence and devastation of empire suggests that the kinship-based thinking supposedly purged by Christianity re-emerged in Europeans' new theories of race. Henrich could reply that theories of race might have characterised an immature form of weirdness in the 19th century, but that they're alien to a fully mature form of weirdness. Where are they now? In the intellectual dustbin, that's where. But then consider democratic institutions in the West are looking quite shaky right now. The rise of populism has seriously dented the rationalist project. And those voluntary organisations Henrich speaks so highly of, well, they've evolved to include online forums, some of which may be a force for good, but lots of which can seem like breeding grounds for misinformation. In the long term, it may be that overconfidence in our own abilities, which Henrich considers one of the key elements of weird psychology, comes to predominate over all the other elements in his list. We might evolve from rational moral universalists, assuming we were ever that, into neurotic narcissists. And that might be the end point. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm not sure I've any way of knowing. Not yet, anyway.